Not every heartbreak begins with betrayal. Some begin with good people who slowly stop seeing each other. This is the story of Maya and Ethan.
Wait up, Maya!
You can't catch me!
Their relationship goals. If you asked anyone who knew Ethan and Maya, that's exactly what they'd say.
Thank you, beautiful.
This really is a beautiful evening.
I'm just glad I'm spending it with you.
For 4 years, they looked like the kind of couple people secretly wished they had. He never forgot her birthday.
Happy birthday, Maya!
Thank you so much!
He surprised her with flowers on random Tuesdays, luxury dinners, weekend getaways, designer handbags, handwritten notes tucked inside gift boxes. Whenever Maya posted a picture of them online, the comments were always the same. Find me a man like Ethan. This is how a woman should be loved. Power couple. Even her own friends admitted they were jealous.
I don't think I've ever seen you two argue. That's because he's obsessed with her. Honestly, I envy what you have.
What nobody saw was that love doesn't disappear all at once. Sometimes it simply becomes crowded out. Ethan was the kind of man everyone depended on. His phone never stopped ringing. One friend had car trouble.
Hey, my brother, add some power! I'm trying,
Another needed
Banange.
help moving house. Someone else wanted advice about their business. A cousin needed money. Another friend was going through a breakup. Ethan showed up for everyone. Everyone, except the person who needed him most. It wasn't dramatic enough to call neglect. It happened in tiny moments. Maya, can we move dinner to tomorrow? Josh isn't doing too well. I'm so sorry, babe. Marcus needs me tonight. I know I promised we'd spend Saturday together, but Ben's asked for a favor.
Every reason sounded reasonable. Every excuse made sense. How could she possibly complain that her boyfriend was kind? So she smiled. Of course. No problem. Go. She became the understanding girlfriend everyone admired. What no one realized was that every cancelled date left behind something invisible. Disappointment, loneliness, silence. Months turned into years. They almost never argued. People thought that meant they were happy. But sometimes, couples don't fight because everything is perfect. Sometimes, they don't fight because one person has simply stopped expecting anything.
Whenever Ethan finally did make time for her, he was wonderful, attentive, affectionate, generous. Those moments reminded her why she'd fallen in love in the first place. She kept telling herself, this is just a busy season. Things will get better. But somehow, there was always another emergency, another favor, another person who needed him first. One evening, they had reservations at her favorite restaurant. She had bought a new dress, done her hair, spent nearly an hour getting ready.
20 minutes before he was supposed to arrive, her phone buzzed. Babe, I'm so sorry. Rand's having a really hard time. He needs me. She stared at the message, then looked at herself in the mirror. Perfect makeup, beautiful dress, an empty dining table. For the first time, she didn't cry. She simply took off her earrings, changed into her pajamas, ordered takeaway, and ate alone.
That night, something inside her quietly shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough for loneliness to begin sounding louder than loyalty. She still loved Ethan. She wasn't looking for another man. She wasn't planning to cheat. She just wanted someone, anyone, to ask how her day had been. She had no idea that a single conversation was about to change everything.
Loneliness rarely arrives with an announcement. It doesn't knock on your door and introduce itself.
it settles in quietly. In unanswered messages, in cancelled plans, in eating dinner for one while telling yourself he's just busy. For Maya, it had become normal. She stopped asking Ethan to make plans because she already knew how the conversation would end. I'll try. Let's see how work goes. Some things come up. She stopped complaining too. After all, what was she supposed to say? Can you stop being such a good friend to everyone else? That sounded selfish, even to her. So she adapted. She spent more evenings reading. She joined a gym. She reconnected with old friends. She told herself she was simply becoming more independent. One evening, after work, a colleague named Daniel noticed she seemed unusually quiet. Everything okay? She smiled automatically. I'm fine. He laughed. That's the most convincing lie I've had all week. For some reason, she laughed too. It was the first genuine laugh she had had in days. The conversation lasted 5 minutes, then 10, then 30. There was nothing flirtatious
Still can't
about
believe
it.
that meeting.
He
I
asked
know, it
about
was
her
way too
work,
long.
her
Are you coming back
family,
tomorrow?
the
Yeah,
books she
unfortunately.
liked. He listened, really listened. When she got home that night, Ethan was asleep on the sofa. His phone lay on his chest. She kissed his forehead, covered him with a blanket, and went upstairs. She never mentioned Daniel. There didn't seem to be anything worth mentioning. Days turned into weeks. She and Daniel occasionally grabbed coffee after work. Sometimes they'd message about films, sometimes about work, sometimes about nothing at all. She noticed something strange. He remembered little things, the presentation she'd been nervous about, her niece's birthday, the author she'd mentioned wanting to read. He'd ask, "How did it go?" And she'd find herself smiling before she replied. Meanwhile, life with Ethan continued exactly as it always had.
These
He
are for you,
still
Maya.
bought her flowers, still surprised her with gifts, still kissed her goodbye every morning, still told
I
her
love
he
nights like
loved her.
this.
From the outside, nothing had changed, but inside the relationship, everything had. One Friday evening, Ethan cancelled another date. I'm really sorry, babe. Jake's mom's in hospital. He shouldn't be alone tonight. Maya looked at the message, then at the 2 theater tickets she'd booked weeks earlier. She didn't even reply. She folded them in half and dropped them into the bin. An hour later, Daniel texted. How was the play? She stared at the screen. Then, without really thinking, she typed, "It didn't happen." A few seconds later, her phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Instead, they talked
know,
for
it's been a
nearly
really long
2
day.
hours about childhood,
You-
dreams,
About you.
disappointments, life. When the call ended, Maya sat in silence. She knew something had changed. Not because she'd fallen in love, but because she'd shared parts of herself with another man that she no longer shared with her own partner. She told herself it was harmless. After all, nothing physical had happened. Weeks passed, then months. Daniel wasn't the only person who entered her life. At a networking event, she met someone else. Later, through mutual friends, another. Each connection began the same way. A conversation. Someone who noticed her. Someone who had time. Someone who made her feel seen. Each relationship was different. One was emotional, another became physical, then another. She never planned any of it, yet somehow she found herself living 2 lives. At home, she was still Ethan's devoted girlfriend. Outside, she was searching for pieces of herself in people who barely knew her. Every time, she promised herself it would be the last. Every time, loneliness returned. The irony was almost unbearable. She felt guilty every single day, but guilt wasn't enough to make her stop. Because every time she considered ending things with Ethan, he would arrive with flowers, book a surprise weekend away,
I told you you'd
buy
love
her
it.
the necklace she'd once admired in a shop window months earlier. He loved her. Of that she had no doubt. He simply loved too many other people at the same time. She convinced herself that was the real tragedy. What Maya didn't know was that Ethan had his own secrets. While she believed she was the only one carrying the weight of betrayal, someone else's name had already become a regular fixture in Ethan's phone. A name she had never noticed, a conversation she had never questioned, and a line he kept telling himself he had never really crossed.
It wasn't a dramatic confession. There was no anonymous message, no private investigator, no elaborate scheme. One ordinary afternoon, Ethan borrowed Maya's laptop to print a document. A notification appeared in the corner of the screen. Then another. Then another. Curiosity became suspicion. Suspicion became certainty. Within an hour, the relationship he believed he understood no longer existed. Messages, photos, hotel bookings, names he had never heard before. Not one man, several. His hands shook. When Maya came home that evening, she knew immediately. The laptop was open on the dining table. Ethan was sitting beside it, silent. "You want to tell me something?" he asked. For the first time in years, they argued. Not because they had finally learned how to communicate, but because there was nothing left to protect. Maya didn't deny it. She couldn't. "I cheated." Those two words were enough. The relationship ended that night. News traveled quickly. Friends called. Families found out. People chose sides almost immediately. Everyone chose Ethan. How could they not? He had always been the devoted boyfriend, the generous one, the dependable one, the man who bought flowers for no reason, the man who never forgot anniversaries, the man whose girlfriend had betrayed him with multiple men. People hugged him, told him he deserved better, called Maya selfish, immoral, heartless. No one asked what the relationship had actually been like. No one asked whether appearances had told the whole story. Maya accepted the blame. She knew what she had done. She didn't defend herself. She didn't mention how lonely she had felt. She didn't mention the birthdays he had missed because someone else needed him, or the holidays that became favors, or the countless dinners she had eaten alone. None of those things excused what she'd done. So she stayed silent. Ethan stayed silent too, but for different reasons. A few weeks after the breakup, his phone buzzed. "Are you okay?" The message came from Claire, the woman Maya had never questioned, the woman Ethan had insisted was just a friend. Their conversations stretched back nearly 2 years, every day. Good morning, good night, long conversations after work, private jokes, emotional support, confessions, dreams. There had been no physical affair. Not because the opportunity never existed, but because neither of them had allowed it to reach that point. Still, there were conversations Ethan had never shared with Maya, comfort he had sought elsewhere, emotional intimacy he had quietly withdrawn from his own relationship. And Claire wasn't the only woman who occupied space in his life. There were flirtatious messages he dismissed as harmless, attention he enjoyed but never corrected, boundaries that grew blurrier with time.
He had spent years convincing himself that because he hadn't slept with anyone else, he was faithful. After the breakup, he replayed everything in his mind. He realized something that made him deeply uncomfortable. He had judged Maya by the worst thing she had done, but he had judged himself by the best intentions he believed he had. She had crossed obvious lines. He had spent years standing just close enough to them to feel innocent. Were they the same? No. What Maya did was more extensive and undeniably destructive. She had chosen repeated deception and physical affairs. That mattered.
But Ethan could no longer pretend he had been an entirely faithful partner simply because his betrayals looked different. The relationship hadn't been destroyed in a single night. It had been eroding for years, by neglect, by silence, by emotional distance, by choices, different choices, but choices nonetheless. Months later, they happened to cross paths at a cafe. There was no shouting, no tears, only two people who had once loved each other, now strangers carrying different kinds of regret. "I really hurt you," Maya said quietly.
"You did," Ethan replied. After a long pause, he added, "And I wasn't the partner I convinced myself I was." She looked at him surprised. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was simply the first completely honest sentence either of them had spoken in years. People still tell their story as though it had one villain and one victim. It's easier that way, but the truth is often less satisfying. Sometimes one person's betrayal is louder, the other person's is quieter. Sometimes one gets caught, the other never does. And sometimes the greatest tragedy isn't that a relationship ends, it's that two people can spend years looking like the perfect couple while slowly becoming strangers to each other.